And Dad, he was in the First World War, and he always told me, he said, if they ever get you in the Army, they'll straighten you out. So as soon as I got old enough, I went. And then they told us that the war was over, and we'd soon be going back home. I said, I don't want that, so 26th of April, 46, I enlisted for 18 months. Just so that I'd be able to go somewhere. And like I say, they put me in the Asiatic Pacific campaign, and we wound up in Japan on occupational duty. Well, first we went up the Aleutian Islands, and from the Aleutian Islands we went down to Hawaii, and there we resupplied and picked up replacements. We were there for about a week, because when we started to pull out going over, we blew a boiler in the ship, and they had to bring us back in there and wait for repairs, and they let us off the ship for about 4 hours at a time, just groups at a time. And it was quite an experience. We had a storm about 5 days out of Japan, and I had noticed the merchant marines tying everything down, and I think, so now we're getting close to Japan, they don't want them to steal that stuff, so they're tying it all down. But no, next morning, about 4 o'clock in the morning, now on that ship, we ate out of our mess kits, and we ate on long tables down the galley, and we stored our mess kits underneath our bunks, which was about 3 tiers high. And I woke up, and all them mess kits are sliding to one side of the ship, and then it would come back up out, and it'd slide back to the other side. And I worked my way up to where I could look out, and I looked out, and when the front of that boat went under the water and started back up, I knew it was time to get back to my bunk area. And I thought I'd die before I got on in there. I was sick from that time on to got off on in Yokohama. I got in there, and I joined the 25th Medical Battalion with 25th Division. And I spent some time down in, they had a utility shop down in the basement of the building that we were in. It was an 8-story building. They had the whole battalion in it, that one particular building. So anyway, I'd spend time down in the utility section, and Sergeant Russo was a utility sergeant, and it come up his time to rotate back, get discharged. See, at that time they had discharged them on what was known as a point system. You got so many points for so many days of combat and this, that, and the other. So got to his number, why, the company commander called me in. He knew I was hanging around in the utility shop. He called me in and asked me a few questions about utility work. He said, how many numbers are there on a T-square? And I told him, I said, sir, there's no numbers on a T-square. I said, there's no such thing. I said, it's a T-bevel, not a square, it's a T-bevel. And he laughed. He said, you're our new utility sergeant. I was only a PFC at that time. December of 46, yeah, they had an earthquake there. And like I say, our company was on the 6th floor of the building, and I was near a window. And I looked out, and the ground was like ocean waves. Now, I've often wondered how deep that went. And balls of fire, as gases would escape from the ground, they would ignite because all electricity was shut off in Osaka. And some of the guys is getting ready to run out and such as that. I just sat down on the edge of my bed because there's no place to go. I looked out, and Sergeant Russo, he was sergeant of the guard, and one of our ambulances there in the back of the thing was moving around a little bit, and he went out to set the brakes on it, and he got caught out there. and he was wrapped around the utility pole, had his arms wrapped around the utility pole, and he'd look up at that building. Like I said, it's an 8-story building. And later he said that he thought sure that building was coming over one time. It would never go back. Well, it went, now as it would go down, it was much lower than the canal, which went the other side of a road over here. And it blew the drain covers off down in the basement of that thing. And so anyway, they were getting ready for the tsunami, but it never came. It did not come out. There were 13 people killed there in Osaka, which was a very small thing, but no military. Went into Korea. Went across on a ship, and this Captain Nix was a troop commander on the ship. And I wound up as troop mess sergeant, not knowing anything about cooking or anything. But anytime I'm on a ship, I'm gonna be near something to eat. So anyhow, I was a troop mess sergeant. Every once in a while, I'd have to send one of the KPs or something up there. Now they had merchant marines that done all the cooking and everything, but they had GIs on detail down there, mopping or whatever. Every once in a while, I'd have to send one up to see the troop commander. Well, I'd been in admin company over there for 3 or 4 days, and finally I told Sergeant Miller, I said, I'm going up to CNA, classification and assignment section, and get me a job. And he said, all right, go on. So I did. I went up there. I was up at division headquarters there, 7th Infantry Division. And as I walked into CNA, I met Captain Nix. He's coming out. And he said, Sergeant Gentry, he said, where have you been assigned? I said, I haven't. I'm looking for a job. He said, I need the meanest sergeant that ever put on a pair of combat boots. I said, well, I don't know what I'm that mean, but I said, I do have a reputation. I'm a little forceful. And so he took me into the commandant's office, and commandant, he telling me what it consisted of. It was duty NCO of the headquarters company. And he said, right now, he said, the duty NCO is over in Japan in a Section 8 ward, a nut ward. And he said, they normally last about 3 months. I looked at him and I says, sir, whenever you see the chaplain packing his bag, getting ready to go AWOL, as you come in that company area, I said, I'll be there. And he said, you know, he said, I believe you'll make it. I said, there ain't a doubt in my military mind. I said, if you assign me that job, I said, I'll be there. Now he said, you're going to have a lot of old master sergeants that works in the various sections over here in the division. And he said, you'll have to deal with them. I said, well, when they crossed that little bridge going into the company area, had to cross a little bridge, I said, they lose all their rank right there. I said, the only man that ranks me, enlisted man, would be the first sergeant. And he said, yep, okay. So next, I went. They got my gear and everything, and took me up to the company. And next morning, in fact, I was there 2 days and nights. I didn't even unpack my bag. You've never went into a unit that at least didn't have a company roster. That company, it did not. It didn't have a company roster or nothing. So anyhow, I worked during the day and the evening there. But the first morning we went for PT down to the parade field and Reveille. Why, the first sergeant, he had the company formation, and he said, all sick, lame, and lazy, fall out, back to the barracks, get ready for breakfast. And man, you ain't never seen so many fall out going back to the barracks. So we double timed down there anyhow, and had the PT and Reveille. Coming back, I was up toward the front. And when each platoon got to that little bridge, they just fell apart. No military dismissal, nothing. So I'm standing there propped up on the bridge, and here comes the company commander. He was behind the company. And I said, "What is that?" He said, "That's what I mean." He said, "I have never seen anything like it." I said, "I haven't either." During that day, I told the first sergeant, I said, "From now on," I said, "all outside formation and such," I said, "I'll take it." Next morning, I said, "All sick, lame, and lazy, fall out over here." So there's a whole bunch of them. And I started checking buck slips. Some of them 6 months past. They had no excuse for not being. So I had put a master sergeant in charge of the company to run them down there. So I sent them on down there. Well, I wound up with about 20 that I figured was legit. I said, "I'll have these rechecked," and I said, "I'll give them back to you." And like I say, some of them was legal, some of them was permanent, But I heard that they was going to Shanghai Gentry out and send him up to the DMZ. So that was about the third day. So I went in and I walked past the first sergeant. When Captain Nixon done told me, "Anytime you want to see me, come and see me." So I walked past him and went in, and the company commander said, "What was it?" I told him, I said, "You go out there and relieve that first sergeant." Well, I said, "I will." And I said, "If I do, I'll whip him all over his company area." You want to know what's going on? I told him. I said, "They're going to get together and Shanghai me out up to the DMZ." And he said, "Oh, no, they're not." So anyhow, he went out there and told that first sergeant, he said, "You've been here too long." He said, "I'm going to send you back to Japan to the R&R Center and let you complete your tour." But he said, "For the time being," he said, "I want you to go down to your barracks, lay down on your bed, and stay there." And he asked me, he said, "Now, who's going to be the first sergeant?" I said, "I am." He said, "You're the duty NCO." I said, "Sir, I got 2 company clerks there. And if they can't take notes, answer the telephone," I said, "we'll get rid of them too." I said, "I'll be the field first." So I'd been there about 4 or 5 days. And he said, he's walking down there and he said, "Gentry, you speak French?" I said, "Yes, I do." And he stopped and he said, "Now, I'm serious." He said, "Do you speak French?" I said, "Yeah, it's conversational French. I spent 3 years over there." And he said, "Well, I got a job for you if you'll take it." I said, "What does it consist of?" He said, "Well," he said, "I can't tell you." He said, "You've got to go to Saigon and be interviewed." I said, "Okay." So they put me in the Jeep and run me to Saigon. I went to the commandant. They took me to the commandant's office. And I noticed this first sergeant sitting over in the corner. He wasn't having anything to say. So the commandant, he told me about what it was consisted of. And they needed a team leader for KB3. And I told him, I said, "Okay, due to the fact I could speak French, if my interpreter got killed, our team could function by me speaking French, because French was the second language of the Vietnamese people." After I accepted the job, the first sergeant, he took over. And he told me, "Go get your gear and everything, come back." And we were billeted in a hotel there in Saigon. We all had quarters there. But in processing, we made arrangements for all of our money go to Chase Manhattan Bank, because they never knew where we was going to be from one payday to the next. So there's no such thing as a payday. It all went to the bank. And then, of course, we wrote checks for whatever we needed. and we was wherever we were sent. Now, I was in Cambodia 3 times. But anyway, again, sometimes wore civilian clothes, and sometimes it was uniform. Most of the time it was uniform. But if they were hostility toward the uniform, they might send us in as cord people. Now, C-O-R-D-S, I never did find out what each letter meant, but it meant something. Now, we all carried 45s, hung low. We had commercial holsters, and we hung low with that like a bunch of cowboys. So I wore a cowboy hat, and breeches legs normally rolled halfway to my knees and such. We were in, that's just like unit commander told us, you get caught in Cambodia or something, we don't know you. You're a bunch of deserters, and that's okay with us. So anyhow, another time, we was up there, and a man came by me, same little village, came by and told me, he said, there's 12 NVA soldiers out there at the market. Every village had a little marketplace. I said, I'll go up and tell the artillery people up on the hill. I said, they may want to drop a few rounds back in the bush. The lieutenant wanted to know what we were talking about, speaking French. I told him, I said, there's 12 NVA soldiers out at the market there. And that idiot wanted to attack. I said, Lieutenant, I said, 4 men with 45, we didn't even have our combat gear. We normally stashed it somewhere. We had M16s and helmets and flak jackets and the whole works. But like I said, we didn't normally carry it with us. And I said, you mean to tell me 4 men with 45 going out there and attack 12 well-armed, well-disciplined, well-trained enemy? Oh, he said we can get 4 or 5 of them before they even know we're there. We got the element of surprise. Lieutenant, what them other people going to be doing? We may get 4 or 5 of them, but what the rest of them going to be doing? I said, if they come this way, I said, we're going this way. Every time we went into a place, I would set up a defensive battle plan. Every man knew what he's supposed to do and where he's supposed to be and such as that. So anyway, the lieutenant wanted to know what my battle plan was, and I told him. I said, you and I have the only room with a bunker, a sandbag bunker in here. And I said, if we need it, I said, here's where we are, because we got 1 door and 1 window. So things, well, we used that 1 room. When the news came on at home, the wife saw it. They saw how that they had tore the place out. And I had made the mistake of telling her where we were and that we were in that facilities. And anyway, the enemy had overrun the town, village. They had hit Long Bend and Benwire Base, such. There's Australian tanks came in the yard. And of course, the enemy withdrew. We came out, couldn't get in Long Bend or Benwire because they was under attack. So we made it back to Saigon. That was on a Sunday morning. Tuesday, I came back to Benwire. I needed to go to Swan Lock. So I came back and they went into TOC, which is the Tactical Operations Center, TOC. The lieutenant at the desk, he said, what are you doing here? I said, well, I'd like a little information. how's things between here and Swanlock, Providence? No, he said, you're that team is up in Honai, aren't you? I said, yeah. He said, you guys have been reported KIA. I said, well, you haven't been in to get no bodies, have you? And he said, no. He said, the enemy still has the town. We saw them mopping up as we went into Benoit Air Base. We saw a few bodies along. And they're just kind of cleaning the place up. So, but this time, somebody went upstairs and told the major. And the major came down, and I said, you haven't sent out any Crown reports, have you? And he said, no. I said, well, just forget it. And we was there for the next hour or so. Who helped you to get away? How did you get away? What's the body count? All kind of crazy questions. When I come back from Germany, I was 3 years in France and 2 years in Germany. They curtailed back in '66 a lot of key NCOs and officers because that was a large influx into Vietnam. That sergeant asked me, he said, well, where do you want to go? I said, well, I started in Fort McClellan, I might well end it down there. Anyhow, Captain asked me, he said, are you afraid of snakes? And I said, no. He said, every morning I want you to get a Jeep, go out and start catching snakes. He said, we're going to need them for survival training. Anyhow, they sent in another sergeant, and he would do the driving, and I would catch the snakes. And I had them in garbage cans, anything I could put them in. I had a good job. I was a snake hunter. All I had to do was just take them out to the survival training, and for 4 hours, I had nothing to do while the instructors was instructing on survival and snakes and this and that. I'd pick them up and take them back. They kept sending me word to report to brigade, and I wouldn't go. Finally, they ordered me to brigade. I went up there, and the brigade sergeant major, he's a big old black sergeant major, he introduced me to Colonel Williams, and the sergeant major's name was Williams. So anyway, he told me that the 1st battalion was full. They had to open another battalion. They had to have a first sergeant. I said, I ain't a first sergeant. I was an E7. And he said, yeah, but he said, your record shows where you have been a first sergeant. No, I had sat in as a first sergeant. So I finally saw I couldn't get out of it, and I told him, I said, one thing about it, if I take that company, I said, I'll run it. I said, you don't come in my company here and tell my men to do nothing. You can come into the company and tell me what you want done, and I'll tell them. So he slammed his fist down on the desk, and he said, that's what we need, somebody with guts. So I wound up with a company, A2, A Company, 2nd Battalion. Everything went real good. They'd use my company as a whipping company. These other companies would say, if you don't shape up, I'll send you to A2. They didn't want to come to A2. All my cadre had been to Vietnam at least once, even to include the company commander. And they knew what the men were going to face. Everything going real good. Had a couple of congressional investigations and a few other things go on, but one old boy named White, he was over in the company across the street. I went over there and I was looking for a sergeant because I'd heard that they had lost control over there. And I was looking for him, and old White, he said, it ain't my day to look after him. And I think, because in my company, when you spoke to an NCO, first thing you did to take your cap off. And old White, he didn't even take his hat off, no. So it just so happened that he got recycled into A2. So things going pretty good. White wasn't too awful bad. So I missed Sergeant Bass one morning at formation and got looking for him, went down to the mess hall, and old White had him down beating on him. I grabbed his M14 and slapped him across the shoulders and knocked him off a bass. I told him, I said, you could whip one of us. I said, this army's full of NCOs. You can't whip us all. So anyhow, I put him back out there in ranks and everything. And things went good after that. You know, we're coming back from graduation. Company commander asked him, he said, White, he said, what do you think of A2 now? He said, sir, he said, a lot of my friends that was over in I think it was Echo Company, the 1st Battalion. He said, they were not trained. He said, I feel that I was thoroughly trained and prepared for what ahead of me. And he said, I thank the NCOs for the job that they've done. And like I say, I met one of them in Vietnam. We was in Long Bend, and we went to the PX. And I came out, little colored guy there, and he said, Sergeant Gentry, he said, you probably don't know me, don't remember me. I said, no, I'm afraid I don't. He said, well, he said, I was in the last cycle when you was first sergeant, or drill sergeant. And he said, there's 12 of us over in that hooch going home now. And he said, when I seen you walking across there, and like I say, I wasn't dressed nothing like he had been used to. He said, I told them, he said, that's Sergeant Gentry. Nobody walks like Sergeant Gentry. But anyhow, he said, I always remembered what you told me, or told us. I said, yeah. He said, that's all I got. He had a scar up his arm. It could have been a piece of shrapnel, it could have been a bullet, I don't know. But anyhow, he had a scar on it. He said, that's all I got. And I have wished many times I'd went to that hooch and thanked them men for the job they did, because they sure didn't get it when they got back home. But like I say, I thanked the young man, and he went about his business, and so did I.